I can't undo the past. I cannot undo anything. All I can do is what's here, what can I learn, and how do I not get sucked into the emotions that are drowning us all?
Hi, I'm Laine, and welcome to Laine's Domain, where we deconstruct the game of life one player at a time. Today's special guest player is Vera Stasny, a very accomplished woman and a dear friend of mine. She's written a book called Being Heard, Healing Voices of Trauma, a collection of writings. She's also a practitioner of multiple alternative healing modalities. Vera's been faced with numerous health issues throughout her life and has used both holistic and conventional methods to heal herself. She has been successful in the fields of education as well as finance. She was the vice president of a financial firm, a large financial firm in New York City, but now she is retired and divides her time between New York City and Vermont. She skis half the year and avails herself of New York City's amenities the other half, plus a couple of visits to her twin sister in beautiful San Diego. Vera, like myself, is a lifelong learner and seeker. She is drawn to the unexplainable and the unseen. So the first thing I wanted to ask you is, part of the title of your book is so intriguing. The very first two words, being heard. What does that mean to you, being heard in the context of your life?
Being heard to me meant that I was letting the silent voices in me that I had squashed forever to silence them. It was to let them out finally and get expression and free it up from my body.
So it was about you hearing those voices coming out of you, or others hearing those voices?
Well, I guess you could say both. I wrote the poems to survive. And then a friend of mine who's a life coach said to me it would be selfish not to share these words with other people because other people were going through similar things. So my story is unique to me, but my emotions are not unique, they're universal.
Did you find any difficulty or a challenge at all in revealing such personal feelings and emotions to the public?
Oh, I still have anxiety about it. Yes, I would have liked to have silenced them forever and pretend they didn't exist, but that doesn't work. We're in a schoolroom.
Right. Well, so how did you find that courage to be able to go and open yourself up this way?
I guess courage from other people encouraging me to share it. Like, you were probably one of the first people that said, write it down, when I had sleepless nights. So that started my journey.
Yeah. I mean, you just had so much. There was so much there. It just felt like if you didn't write it down, where was it going to go?
My intention was to just let the voices come out as they demanded to be heard. And sometimes they demanded to be heard on the subway, riding in New York. Sometimes they demanded to be heard when I was in a doctor's office waiting for some god-awful news again. And sometimes I'd see a movie, or I would be somewhere and those voices were triggered by an event that I witnessed or a movie that I saw that triggered some feeling in me. So I volunteered with my sister for a day for wounded warriors. They all had PTSD, and I recognized that frozen look, and I recognized that in some way I had those emotions, but if they were a 10, I was a 0.5, but I recognized it. So that got me to write as well.
So was it like looking in a mirror when you saw their faces?
Yeah, yes. But I would never equate my traumas to somebody who'd witnessed war and devastation. But the body's response to trauma is the body's response. the trauma changes for each person, but none of us is without trauma.
So you took on some of the trauma of your parents who were in London at the time of World War II. What do you remember anything from there or from how they were in that terrifying situation?
I don't remember anything consciously. I only tried to imagine it, and I tried to feel into those situations when I saw something similar. So when 9/11 happened, I had an insight on what it felt like to lose people overnight, when suddenly your reality totally changes, and the emotion that it stirred in the nation.
Now, did your parents know what was going on when they got out of Czechoslovakia, or were they just planning on moving to England?
Well, they both had they had their own stories and their own reasons, and I only know what they told me. I don't really know, but nobody expected what happened to happen. And so my mother came to England to learn English and figured she'd go back after things quieted down. And my father was in the army, in the Czech army, stationed in England. So they met in England, but nobody talked about what happened. You know, there was a wall that went down, and in my family, they didn't talk about the past.
So you were born in England then, in London?
Right. We came here when we were almost 4. So I don't have a British accent, unfortunately.
You could put one on.
But of course, darling.
Of course, darling. So, so you said you had an unremarkable childhood up until, you had a cancer diagnosis when you were 21. It's just no traumas happened to you during those times?
Just childhood traumas of some kid making fun of you or not being picked for the school play or some event that you wanted, or not being asked to dance, just the usual kinds of little traumas, but unnoticeable, and we wouldn't even label them as traumas. But yeah, when I was graduating college, I was diagnosed with cancer.
Did you have were you in robust health up until that point? Is that why it was such a shock to you? Or did you have any kind of health issues before the age of 21 that were minor?
Well, when I look back now, I can see things that were informational, but we were not, as a society, we weren't conscious of any of those things at the time. And just normal, getting colds, taking antibiotics, having your tonsils taken out, having cavities, having mercury fillings, all that stuff that we now know did damage. But then it was like, that was normal.
So what happened? How did you end up getting that diagnosis? Did you just go in for a regular, visit?
No, my father told me I didn't look normal. My stomach was extended. And he said I had to go to the doctor.
Wow. And so what happened after that?
I kind of froze. I looked like a painting on the wall. There wasn't the therapy that we have today. And I think the survival rate was kind of minimal at that point. But I was very lucky. It was early stage, so I never had any chemo. I never had any treatments. So I guess I was lucky. So when he said 5 years later, congratulations, I said, why? Why? I didn't know I was supposed to die. So
Wow.
I just lived like I was living because it never entered my head. Well, at least I didn't get a diagnosis that said you've got less than X number of months or years to live, because we're so programmed to believe what the doctors tell us.
Exactly.
So I escaped.
That is one thing that I wanted to bring up, is that you are such an amazing person. You use conventional medicine to diagnose whatever, do your tests, see where everything's at, diagnose if there's something going on. But then you take control of your health. You take control of what you're going to do to deal with whatever situation it is, rather than giving your power over to the medical industry. How did that come about?
Well, I guess when you're diagnosed with the unthinkable and there's no nothing offered to help you. And then 30 years later, I had another diagnosis, and it took them a year to figure out what was wrong with me. And the doctor said, well, come back in a year and there's no cure and there's no treatment and we don't know why it happens. And come back in a year, we'll test you. And I walked out and I said, that is the dumbest thing I ever heard. We have nothing to offer you, but come back. So we'll just wait till you need a liver transplant. So, or you don't live because your liver isn't working. So I thought, you've got to do something, because anything is better than doing nothing but watching a test flunk year after year. So I started with acupuncture, and then whatever showed up at my doorstep, I checked out and tried, and it really has made a difference. So they wanted to put me on different drugs, and I just said, I can't do this. I tried the drug for a week and come off it. So I would say that I've lived beyond my expiration date, because the diagnosis for my liver disease is 20 to 25 years, and I'm 30 years so far. And my doctor said, you are not going to die from this disease. So whatever I'm doing is helping, certainly not hurting, and there's no risk. So 30 years ago and beyond, when I was diagnosed with all these things, there wasn't the internet and there wasn't the Zoom and the technology. So now information's at your fingertips. So it's a wonderful opportunity to do your own research and find out what little glimmers of hope there are. So I listen, and I kind of listen to what are they all say, what's similar about they're all saying, and what's a little too outlierish for me that I'm not willing to do.
It's fantastic. I absolutely agree. So how do you feel that the traumas that you have expressed in your book had anything to do with the health issues that you've experienced?
Probably everything, because my journey's been so different from everyone else's. I didn't get married. I don't have children. I don't have grandchildren. So that makes me very different. And in traditional societies, I would have totally flunked, because in traditional societies, that's what women do, right? But I don't feel that way at all. I feel really empowered, and that I'm living the best life I can. And the poems are just voices that come out. They're not even my voices sometimes. I was somewhere, and there was a woman who was so toxic that I could feel it. I was at a meeting with about 10 women, and she was so negative that I walked out of there, sat in my car, and wrote this poem about it. So some of the poems are really just voices I'm feeling, and I can't avoid feeling it because they're so potent, but they're not necessarily voices from me. But I wrote the poems in the first person because you can't be pointing fingers. You can't be.
So are those, when you say voices, so there's multiple voices that speak different feelings to you?
Well, I guess if I call it a voice for lack of a better word, but it's just an emotion that's inside that has to erupt out. You can't heal it if it doesn't come to the light. You can't heal it if you don't own it. And you can't see it if you don't let it out.
So have you become more observant over your lifetime of how you're feeling in the moment, what you're sensing?
Yes, definitely. It's like I respond from my head a lot, so I can rationalize anything. And I don't know if it's a gift or a deficit, but I have a big power of forgiveness. I can forgive everyone almost everything, because I try to understand where they're coming from.
I think that's a gift, because when we don't forgive, we've given away some of our power to somebody else, and it's like a cord from us to them, And I think it just sucks energy out of us. So I think it's a gift. And, yes, of course, you're mental because you're extremely intelligent. And now that you're in touch with your emotions, that is a real balancing act. And it's quite powerful.
Thanks.
So what made you decide to become a teacher? Were you an intellectual in high school and college?
I wouldn't call myself an intellectual. It was a very respected career in my parents' eyes from Europe. And I always wanted to be a teacher, probably because that's all I knew. But then I stopped when interest rates were at 17%, and I was priced out of everything I liked. I switched careers and got into financial services and became a financial advisor.
So you go from teaching and kind of the warmth of being with children to the world of high-powered finance. How was that transition for you?
Well, at the time, I thought it was fine. When I look back, it was pretty stressful. But it gave me an opportunity to really learn very different skill sets and to be perceived by the world very differently in retrospect. I did that for twice as long as I taught. I was in the financial services industry for 30 years.
Wow. Wow. Well, you were a very respected person in that field and a very successful, which is amazing. I love it when women are super successful. You are my role model.
Thank you. Behind every successful person is a former teacher. Everyone's had teaching in their background. If you can teach to little kids, you can communicate with adults. Because kids are much more upfront about whether you're succeeding or not.
Right. They're not going to lie to you, right? They're going
to. They're not interested. They just tune out.
Right.
Or act out.
Or act out. Oh my goodness. Yeah, I wouldn't want to be a teacher today. But so I want to talk about your book, Being Heard, Healing Voices, a collection of writings. Tell me all about it.
Well, I wrote the poems probably over 4 years. So I went online and did it on a self-publishing book. And the next thing I know, every week I get calls from different people, different publishers wanting to represent me to publish the book.
Oh, that's so exciting, though. I mean, it shows you that your book is speaking to people.
Hopefully.
I would love if you would read a couple of your poems for us.
Sure. So a lot of the poems I wrote were memorials, because my mother died, my aunt died, I had friends around me die. And I wrote this, it's called Did I Touch You? And I've actually read it at a few funerals that I attended. So, did I touch you? When I no longer walk upon this earth and I leave you behind, will you remember me? Will you hold me in your heart? Will you smile in those moments when you are reminded of me? Will you cherish me? Will you say I made you laugh? Will you say I made you cry? Will you say I made you angry? Will you say I helped you understand? Will you say I taught you something? Will you say I loved you? Will you hold me in your heart? Then I have touched you.
That's so beautiful. Whew. Very, very powerful.
Well, some of the African traditions say that there are 3 levels. It's not just the living and the dead, it's the near living. So if someone's alive who still remembers you, then you're part of the near living. And so that kind of is this. If there's someone alive who still knows you or remembers you, then you're part of the near living.
Oh, Vera, that's beautiful. Now, did you write that for any particular person, or?
I think I wrote it because so many people died, and I thought, well, what does that mean? Did they leave their impact? It's not just your kids who say, I lost my mother, I lost my father, but everyone who's walked on this earth touches somebody in some way. And if you don't try and honor that, then you're missing the gift they left, their legacy.
Beautiful. Very, very beautiful. So Vera, tell us the story about like how you dealt with your mom, her dementia, and how that affected you, and the gift that she gave you with that experience.
Oh, my mom had dementia for almost 15 years that we knew where she needed help. I used all my different healing modalities to work to be with her. So I would sing to her and I would step in her reality, not my reality. I talked to somebody who said he brought his mother up from Florida, and if he only could get her to understand she wasn't in Florida anymore, it would be much easier. And I remember saying to him, why do you want her to think she's in New York if she thinks she's in Florida? What difference does it make? It's not going to. So I used it as an opportunity to learn the second language. She spoke 4 languages. And so I decided to learn one of the languages so I could communicate her when she stopped. So I could communicate with her when she stopped speaking English, which she ultimately did.
What did you learn? What language?
Czech, because my aunt spoke Czech, but she spoke German, Hungarian, French, English, and everyone in those small countries spoke multiple languages. I must have made 100 scarves for the people in the nursing home while I was sitting there. Yeah, it was quite an adventure. And I think what it did, she allowed my heart to open.
How so?
Because you had to be with her and just love her the way she was, because you couldn't do anything else.
You came up with that. Some people don't know what to do. Like the guy who wanted his mother to know that she wasn't in Florida anymore. How did you know how to be with her?
If you're coming from your heart, and not from your head, if you're just present with what is, you get the answers. And I have done so much training in different healing modalities that I just applied a lot of them.
Just a little aside, what healing modalities have you trained in and that you use?
Energy healing. I did cranial sacral training. I did shiatsu training. So many, I can't even remember them. But I'm like the traditional cave woman that goes out and picks flowers. We look around and pick what attracts us. So I pick all these different things and try them. And you take a little bit from each thing that you've done. I've used it for everything.
I love how trendy you are with that. I really do. I mean, you're open to so many things, which I absolutely love. One of the aspects of you that I absolutely love. So you're using them for yourself, but you use them in order to bring yourself to a place to be able to communicate with your mother and to be with her during those times. And that was 15 years, right?
Yeah, and she's gone 10 years, so it's kind of out of my consciousness at this point.
Right. Now,
I can't undo the past. I cannot undo anything. All I can do is what's here, what can I learn, and how do I not get sucked into the emotions that are drowning us all?
How do you not get sucked into those emotions, drowning everyone? I mean, everyone. I think it would be great information for you to share that with us.
Well, for me, what works is this. It's very simple. Is this on my plate or isn't it? And if it's not on my plate, I can't do anything about it. Sorry.
So being on your plate means, do I own it? Is it mine? Is that?
Yeah. So what I own today is, will I go skiing? What trail am I going to go down? What am I going to have for dinner? Am I going to go here or there? But I can't change the world events.
Right.
So I can observe them and feel sad about it, but I can't. It's not on my plate. Exactly. And there are forces beyond us.
Mm-hmm. So if you could talk to a younger version of yourself from where you're at right now, what words of wisdom would you share with her?
Every time I see a young girl in her 15, 20, I think how beautiful they are. If they only knew how beautiful they were. Because when you're 15, you're either too short, too tall. Your hair's too curly, your hair's too straight, you have freckles, you don't have freckles. You have big boobs, you don't have big boobs, whatever it is. So if you could just love yourself for exactly the way you are, and not try and agonize about what you don't have, but appreciate what you do have. So I'm grateful every day for what I have.
That is a beautiful place to be. And you're right, young girls are never satisfied with who they are. And if they could only love themselves a little bit sooner, they'd have a lot more happiness in their life.
We're all 15 in our brain.
It's true. It's true.
I had a boyfriend who said 15, I'm 2. And I laughed. He was about 2.
How did that work out? So Vera, if someone wants to buy your book or get in touch with you, how would they do that?
Oh, my book is on Amazon. I think it's in Barnes and Noble. So you go online and put my name in, author Vera Stasny, and that's my website.
Well, it's very hard to put the book down. I mean, I read it from cover to cover, and each one of your poems and writings just hits you in a different place. And
thank you.
It's a great way to look at your own things. I mean, what strikes a familiar bell for yourself? You know, that may be where you want to go and look at what issues that you're holding in as well. Because when we hold those issues in, I think we suffer health issues.
Oh, I'm sure. If everything has energy, including your words and your thoughts, and if they're locked in your body and they're not good thoughts, they're wreaking havoc somewhere.
Right. So that would be the time that do you have any methods that when things come up for you, how you clear them and how you release them so that you're not holding them any longer?
Well, I kind of look at what was my part in it and what's my responsibility and what's not my responsibility. Like if I say something to you and it hurts you, that wasn't my intention, but I'm not responsible for how you interpret it. I can apologize if you interpreted it badly, but if you can't find forgiveness, I'm not responsible for that.
Yes, and that's a big part of it is so many of us feel responsible for the way other people are feeling. And, you know, are we really responsible for that? Or are we responsible for our actions? You know, it's like, how do you know what you own and what you don't own?
Years of work.
Right. You first have to know, you know, you have to come out of the unconscious state and become conscious and start looking at your stuff. And, you know, I love how you've done that. And I love your book, Being Here, Healing Voices of Trauma, a collection of writings. It can be bought on Amazon. Also on Podcast Poetry Live, you can find some of Vera's poems. Voiced by Vic Arrington, an award-winning poet, and Vera, you said you have a website with your name, verastasny.com.
Author Vera Stasny.com.
Author Vera Stasny, and that's VERASTASNY.com. Thank you so much for being with us today. It has been an absolute honor to talk to you, and thank you so much for everything you've shared. It's really, really helpful information.
Thank you. Thanks, Laine.